So here we are starting our drawing 9 orthographic and isometric um, exercise. The instructions are to use worksheet 8, which I have shown here as the basis for the drawing. So we're doing object A, and we're going to do object D. We'll complete the 3 ortho views in AutoCAD, and then we'll go over to SketchUp as a separate activity and bring in the 3D graphic of the same objects and put them in place of these isometric objects that we have here. So the instructions are to have some rectangles with that are 4.5 wide by they're 4.5 wide by 3 high. So I'm going to draw one rectangle with that dimension. And I'm just going to make sure it's clicked onto a grid. It is. And because I have my grid snap on. My grid snaps for this starting off are 0.25 all the way around with 4 major line, 4 grids per major line. And now these are centerable objects because they have they're continuous rectangle. And that's why I'm using those instead of so now I can just copy these, and then I'm going to repeat that command and copy them again. So now I have the 4 rectangles, and I'll just move them up a little bit. And I want to keep everything on the grids if I can, so we're just snapping to grids there for good measure. And I'm going to go put some projectors in here. I'm going to start my lower left projector right there, 1 grid in from the corner of the frame, and we'll do this one here. And we're going to be doing 2 of these, so just to be efficient, I'll go ahead and put that down there also. But we'll be starting with A, and as usual, we're going to put our face view, our front face view, down here in the lower left to start with. And I'm going to flip over to my visibles and try and draw this outer edge of this object. Now, it's a little unclear on here because I took off the visual reference of the grid. So I'm looking at the actual worksheet in order to measure, but for clarity, I'm just showing the frames on here, so we don't have that grid. And I see from the worksheet that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across this way on the horizontal. So that would be the width. So it's 1.25. If we do distance, if we do grids, it's just clicking on the grids. And the overall height of it is 3 grids. So that's the silhouette or the outer edges of the front view. And now we'll break it into its component faces. I have this face right here, which is sort of L-shaped, and it starts with going across full height at 3 grids, and then it comes down 2 grids and has a little leg on it. So we'll just use the grids and cut in that face like that. So I was fooling around in here, but decided to just go back to my quarter snap, and we'll continue with that. So I want to come in half a grid to get that next edge. And I'm just going to turn my snaps off and on when I need to use the grid or not use the grid. And so I want to come in and I'm going to offset here. It's going to be half a grid, so it's going to be 0.125. We'll just offset that visible line in so that I get that first little edge. And I see that it is 1 grid tall, this this line right here. So I'm going to do another offset. I like using offset. And this time we'll go 0.25 and we'll go up. And that gives me a place for this line. And this was just an offset. So that's the edge right here. Right there. So we're going to continue across the face on that slope, and that's 2 grids over, and actually 1.5 grids over, and 1 grid up. So it's 1.5 from here, like that. So that is what that sort of shed-like structure looks like, which means on the view that we're in, we can use those 2 lines and trim off those outer edges. And I see that I wanted to put this. Oh, geez. What's going on there? I just want to move. All sorts of things happening. I just want to move it up to this view. I was getting confused there. Generally, I'm confused. So what's new with that? So now we have the visible lines, but we have this cylinder hole through the whole depth or the whole height of it, and the cylinder hole is 1.5 over from my projector. So I'm going to offset. Be 1.5 will be 0.375. So there's my edge for my center line, and then I'm going to extend my center line a little bit over each object. So I'm going to do an offset on the object visible lines. I'm just going to guess maybe 0.1 will work. Put it down and above. And then when I go over here to my center line, I can draw a line from those offsets to get a nice consistent offset, because we're going to have more center lines. Now I see I'm already in 1-to-1 scaling, and I see that there's no dashing showing up on my center line, and it should be. It's on the center line layer with its dashed property. So I think I'm going to change this, and we'll change this for all of our center lines to 0.25. And I like this because it has enough dashes, not too many dashes, but it has enough dashes so that it's very clearly the center line. And sometimes you want more, sometimes you want less on those dashes. I'm going to use that as my my dash style for this drawing. And now I need the offsets for those hidden lines, because right on the quadrant there are a hidden line in the front view that coincides with the edge of that circle, and the hole itself has a radius of 1, and so I can offset same it's 1 grid each way. Now these don't extend, right? Hidden lines end right there on the edge of the object line. And AutoCAD knows that and keeps the dashing just the way it should be. So there we have the front face, pretty well done, the front view. I think that's all done. Now let's just do the top. And again, we'll go back over to our projectors and we'll just keep going. Here we got, gotta put my grid snap off and on, lots of stuff going on. Now the depth of this object is 4 grids. So I'm just going to draw now on visible layer. The length or the width there is 1.25, so that's 5 grids over, and it's 4 back, and that's 3, so this is 4. So that's the outer dimensions of the object. And we see from this view that this part up here is at the full height of 0.75, and it is a rectangular area that has a 3 grid wide, and it goes across the whole depth of the object, and it's 3 grids wide. And if we wanted to use our projectors, we could just use this corner and come up. Now, that's going to make a visible line right here. Oops. So that's where that is. And that's that whole top. Now we have to draw the circular view of the top circle. And so I happen to realize that if I put a line across here and then go over to circle, I can just use the midpoint. Gotta make the grid go away there for a second. Gotta get the midpoint, and then the radii is 0.25. It's 1 grid. So that puts it in there just right, and I'll get rid of that line. So I did that. I did that because it was centered. Right? If it was anything but centered, I wouldn't be able to do that. And now we can go over to our center line layer and annotate, tab, center mark, tool, and select the circle. So now we have that nice center mark there. I think this needs to be customized though. So before I go away from it, I'm going to make these extensions 0.06 all the way around, because they kind of butt into some of the visible lines there, and I think it would be confusing to my reader if I left them so long. That's why I'm doing that, so that they don't butt into these other visible lines. And then I see the dashing on this isn't to my liking either, right? I think I want that to be clearly dashed. And so I'm going to use that same 0.25 line type scale, and that's kind of nice. It puts a little dash in every arm. I like that. So that gives us something for our center mark. And now this structure is not full depth, right? It doesn't cover the entire depth. It only covers that back half. And so we have to go ahead and put in the rest of the edge for this little shed roof right here. And well, we should do that with we'll do that with, go back to our home, put it on projector, and get this in here. Right, so we've got that as an edge, and then we know from looking at this that is 2 grids this way, and then it's also 2 grids on that axis. And so that means we have a line that goes along this side, and it goes, just goes 2 grid, 0.5, and then it goes this way. And we're just going to click those 2 lines that I just drew because they're on the top draw order, and change them to visible. And we can get rid of some of that. We got rid of that. And we could have done that by using the side view, but we didn't. So this is the foreshortened roof right there from the top. The rest of that is flat. And we can just end here, and then we'll continue on the next segment.